Hello everyone, my name is Lindsay. I am currently a student in the Emergent Media class at Bloomsburg University, and for this class we had to create a videocast. And for this videocast, I wanted to take some of my personal experiences from being a member of the BU speech and debate team. So basically, I wanted to debate on a very relevant topic that I thought of from being a part of this class. And I wanted to do this because it is so important to examine the issues and concepts in the class. And in order to discuss this, I came up with the resolution or topic, social media platforms should ban harmful misinformation. And to analyze this resolution, I will be debating by looking at both the pros and cons from each side. And first, I'll look at the affirmative side, which is going to argue in favor of the topic and going to argue that social media platforms should ban harmful misinformation. I will also look at the negative side, which is against the resolution and does not support social media platforms banning harmful misinformation. I picked this topic today because in our crazy world, there are so many social issues today that are affected by fake news and misinformation. And this is therefore a major issue that affects everyone. And finally, this topic is extremely relevant to our class because it uses concepts like media literacy from Unit 1, how we construct reality from Unit 6, and finally, news from Unit 7. First, let's dive in to talk about the affirmative side, or in other words, what are pros and what are arguments in support of social media platforms banning harmful misinformation. First, it's important to talk about what do we mean? Let's define our terms. What does banning harmful misinformation mean? And to discuss this, we can look at what would regulation entail. And for this debate, regulation would entail enforcing fact checks, making algorithms transparent and clear to the public, and even editing algorithms so we can stop social media platforms from spreading posts that are currently in the process of being fact-checked. Next, let's dive into our arguments. There are three main arguments today in support of the affirmative side. First, harmful misinformation that is being spread has led to many human lives being extremely damaged or even killed. For example, we can look at the coronavirus pandemic as a great example of this. We have I've seen so many, and I'm sure you have probably seen too, many posts on social media being spread. Masks are fake, they don't work. Or the vaccines are going to give us all microchips in our arms and control us because the government's going to do that. And this is an example of how really harmful misinformation is going to harm lives and has harmed lives, as we have seen so many people dead from the coronavirus pandemic. Another example of this is seeing how extremist figures and sources like InfoWars have affected our lives and have harmed people. For example, far-right sources like InfoWars have spread many false claims and conspiracy theories. And one video in particular has talked about how there's a race war being declared on white people. And what this has actually led to is partially claims like this have led to shootings like the Emmanuel African Methodist Church massacre that occurred in Charleston in June 2015. What did the shooter say after he killed all those people? He wanted to start a race war. Where do we hear that? InfoWars from their social media platforms. And this is another example of how this information being spread has harmed lives. And finally, we can also create transparency among the people if we regulate, so we can see what is going on in these algorithms, what's happening. Oh, and finally, private companies like social media platforms, they have the right to ban users and their posts, and therefore they can regulate and ban these users that are spreading harmful misinformation. Next, let's talk about the negative side. What are cons or arguments against this? First, censorship. That's an easy one, right? People are going to talk about their First Amendment rights, freedom of speech being taken away. Second, it could also damage and influence politics and democracy by creating a bias towards both sides and polarization of our society from both the Democrats and the Republicans. And finally, social media platforms are not government agencies, and therefore, according to the negative, should not be required to enforce these laws. Next, let's let's talk about what are some alternate solutions? What are some ways to compromise? Well, we can just overall improve the public's media literacy by educating them. And second, we can just encourage fact checking for all major posts. Now, let's talk about why this debate was so relevant. And this is because media literacy, as we discussed in this class, can be an alternate solution to this. And the outcomes of either side drastically affect our lives and our social media feeds. And they affect how we construct our reality. How do we see the world? And this affects our news and major social issues in our society. Finally, why is debating important? Well, we can improve media literacy, communication skills, problem solving, and critical thinking. We can also become more open-minded and aware of our world. Finally, let's discuss some takeaways. What can you take away from this video? Number 1, use your information and your media literacy skills that we discussed in this class to form your own opinion and ideas. 2, become more aware of what you find on social media. And 3, just become aware of our world and what is going on in our world today. And with that, thanks for a great semester, guys.